Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alright friends, hello! Welcome to another recap and reaction to Outlander, Season 7, Episode 10, Brotherly Love, where they're really putting us through it, aren't they? And for those of you especially who haven't read the books, I hope you're doing okay. I hope that you've dried your tears by this point, but we're here to commiserate with you, to discuss with you, to pick apart everything, and I can't wait to do that. I haven't been able to film in about a week because I was gone for the holiday, but I did end up watching Outlander on Friday evening on my phone, and then when I got back from my trip, I sat down, watched it again, and took my notes and got my notes on the books ready. So let's go ahead and film this. So yeah, there is a lot that happened here, and we're gonna get it. As always, before we do, remember that I am a book lover first, and so my thoughts on the show all come from the place of how does it compare with the source material. That is how I consume this show. I know that is how a lot of my viewers consume this show, and so that is the eye of which we're coming to it. But I also know that those of you who haven't read the books, don't have the time, don't have the inclination, but would still like to know how well the show is doing, you can hear my thoughts on and how that's going, as well as people in the comments are never too shy to poke up when I forget things. As you'll see in the comments from episode 9, there are definitely things that I miss, and I'm not shy about anyone down below can point out what they think or where I was wrong or whatever. There are people who have been reading these books since they very first came out, and people who have been fans much longer than me, so I am by no means an authority on Outlander, though I would say I have a good amount of passion and knowledge all saved up. So the way that I structure these videos is that first off, we're going to do the recap. I take notes in my little notebook right here, and I walk you through the episode in kind of its linear fashion that it happened. Then I will dive into comparing it to the books, or in this case, it's both books 7 and 8. I'll talk about how accurate I felt it was, and then at the end of doing that comparison, I give an accuracy rating out of 10 of like how close I think it is to the source material. And then yeah, that's how we do it. Sometimes I'm gonna cry, sometimes I'm gonna cuss. All those things are included in a review from the book review. So let us go ahead. Right here, we start with another cold open, and this one is wrapping up pretty much the story of Ian Murray, who we love so much, who made me cry so much in the first episode. I cry even just recounting parts of that. When I was home, there is a very beloved friend of mine, hey Kim, if you're watching this, and we were able to chat a little bit after Thanksgiving, and I like cried even just talking about it with her. I'm a big baby like that. But we started with a cold open of actually Ian Murray, the senior, and it's him and Jamie as little boys. And then Ian's father is teaching them some fighting things, and he's encouraging the young Ian. This is confusing. We have a lot of Ians in this episode. He's encouraging his son to always protect his chief's back, to always be at his left side, you know, which is protecting the heart side, right? You know, always be at his left side. And it's just a very touching moment. We see them as kids, and then we go forward to that same hill, and Jamie has driven Ian out there so he can look at the land one last time, you know. Probably hasn't been up there in years, just with his disability as well as the work, you know, running Lollybrock. And Jamie really has taken care of all of it. You know, Lollybrock was Jamie's birthright, but Ian's lived there longer than any of them have, you know, except Jenny. And they've been so faithful taking care of that all these years. And there's a really touching line where Jamie says, he's like, you remember when little Willie died and you came to me and we exchanged blood and you said, I will be like a brother to you. And Jamie says, I've loved you as a brother ever since. And it's just really hard, you know. I can't even imagine losing my best friend, you know, and even though they've lived apart for so many years, it's been decades at this point, you still always knew he was there, you know. He was always there, taking care of home, raising the family, being that steady heartbeat. That is who Ian has been. And so it was very touching, but hard at the same time. And then we transition to Ian's deathbed, which is very hard to see, but we have Ian and Jenny there with him. And in the show anyway, he comments of, you know, you've always been there for me. It's very beautiful. And his last word in the show is actually Jenny's name, which when we get to our comparison part, that is a place where we've had a tiny little difference, but we'll get to it. But he says Jenny's name, and then he's gone. And then we go to Jamie is digging Ian's grave in the family cemetery, and she's like, how long are you going to stay? And he's like, I'll stay as long as you want. He's planning to make a trip to Paris to make sure Michael and Joni got where they're supposed to be, and then he's going to come back. And in the show anyway, he actually asked Jenny if she would like to come to America, and she said maybe someday, not sure if I will yet. And then, you know, they ask, like, where do you think he is? Do you think he, you know, is fully gone? And Jamie says, I think he's right where he always was. I think he's right here. And they touch the spot between them holding hands. And yeah, and now he's the one overlooking the cemetery, because the last one buried is the one who watches. And I really hope that it's a good long time before anyone else joins them there. So, okay. Now we got through that before the cold open. Now my eyes are nice and red for you guys. I think I can make it through the rest, but Ian Murray is one of the like unsung heroes of the series for me. We don't get a lot of page time with him, but he's someone who just never lets you down when you see him, you know? He is that wonderful brotherly figure, husband figure, fatherly figure. He is all those things, and he just never lets you down when you see him, and that is just, that's so special in a character, you know? I just love it. So, all right, then we have our intro, and we go into, we're back in America now, and we're not going to see Jamie and Jenny for the rest of this episode, which we'll have thoughts on later, right? So we have Ian, young Ian now, and Claire are on their way to see Henry and Lord John, and you know, Ian is hoping to find Rachel again. He promised his father that he wouldn't be afraid of telling her he loves her anymore, and he's going to be moving forward with that. So we notice this city is occupied. They have to show their papers whenever they're going to and from someplace. So that's just kind of setting up the mood of what's going on in the city right now. Okay, so she arrives to a house that she's been told where to go, and there is this African-American woman who opens the door. Claire mistakes her for a servant, not realizing that this is Mrs. Woodcock, and Claire is like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to presume. I'm here to help with Henry, Lord John sent me. And then Mercy immediately, she's like, introduces herself and is like, please come in, we're so glad you're here, because Henry is not doing too hot. And so we explained that there was 3 bullets originally in him, I think, and they were able to get 1 at the time. And then we hear that actually Denzel Hunter did a surgery not too long ago, and he was able to find another one, but there was still one that he couldn't find. And they assume that is what is preventing him from healing all the way. Is there some dirty metal stuck somewhere in him, right? A bullet. But Claire is very happy to hear about this. She's happy to hear about Denny as well, which we love. I've said that I have such a soft spot for Denny. I love this guy so much. We'll talk about him more in a little bit, but he's just so positive about medicine, and I love that Claire has someone else to nerd out with about healing and things like that, and doesn't like question everything she wants to do. He wants to learn because he sees her methods work. So why like fight that? Why make it weird? Why not embrace what she has to take? Anyway, sorry, let me get on my horse, but I love that. So there's this great little moment too where John is wearing his uniform and he explains that he's there for intimidation. And she's like, I thought you had like resigned. And he's like, I did, but the uniform's mine. I keep it and I wear it to intimidate. And this is when we learn that Mercy is actually a rebel. And a little bit of the complication is that Henry was staying with Mrs. Woodcock as a prisoner of war when it was occupied by the Continental Army. And then when the city was overtaken, now technically like she's the one that's under watch, but because he's injured and she's taking care of him, like they haven't like kicked her out or done that. And now that John is there as well, now it's kind of like he's the one intimidating people from causing problems for Mercy. So that's kind of that's the imbalance of like what's going on. Like first Henry was a prisoner of war, and now technically Mercy is the one on the wrong side of everything. But this is her home, and she technically is occupied because we have, you know, the wounded soldier there as well as John there. So people are mostly leaving them alone based on their respect for Lord John and the situation and everything. And so Claire also asks, I need to go to the apothecary to get some vitriol. And he says, oh, well, someone has bought it all. And she's like, oh no, we're going to need that because she needs to make ether so she can do a thorough surgery for Henry. And John says, well, I happen to have purchased all of it, which is such a cheeky moment because remember, he's the one who first provided it for her those years ago when she was experimenting with ether. And he's like, you never told me how it worked, but I snapped it up. And so I just wrote in my notes, I love John. And I love, too, that he has a trust in Claire. They've had an uneasy relationship at times, but they're really on the same side and they love the same people, you know. I mean, they love each other, too, but it's just a very different, it's more of like a grudging, respectful love, right? But that respect of each other and what they bring to the table has grown through the years. And I love seeing that. I really do. It brings me a lot of joy to see it happen, right? Okay, so now we jump back to 1739 and we have Roger and Buck and they're talking about who Galus is, which is stuff we don't need to necessarily re-discuss or anything, but and there was also a thing that I'll mention this from the book. They have her just say Galus Duncan, just to spare us all of the other names she has. But she is currently not married to the same guy that we see when Claire is here because she goes through her husbands pretty quickly. So they just call her Galus Duncan here. But at the time she's called like Galus. We'll get to it when I go through it, but it starts with an I is what her name currently is. Or should be when they're there, but we just let it go because the woman already has enough names. Gillian Edgards, Galus Duncan, who like she has enough. We get it. And so he, you know, explains a little bit of like she's a time traveler too. It was 12 years ago that I met her, but she might not remember me now. She's probably not expecting to see someone from the future, as well as it probably wasn't 12 years ago for her where she is. But anyway, okay, then back to 1777. That's going to get annoying saying, but you know. So Claire now is having a little discussion with Denny, and he's catching her up on what he did and how he was able to find one of the bullet, all the stuff I kind of said. And he said, you know, he was afraid of pushing around in there and rupturing something. And she's like, that's why we're going to open him up. And this is when Denny gets really excited. Okay. He is like, open him up, but won't that cause his body to go into shock and all this? And she's like, that's why we're going to use the ether. I'm going to show you how to make it. And again, I love how excited he is about this, you know, that joy of medicine and of being able to more efficiently save people. It's wonderful to see. So now we have Rachel and William are together at a market right now, as well as Rollo is with us. She's, of course, been the one minding Rollo while Ian's been gone. William still being a little bit flirty with Rachel, but I feel like she has him in a good place. Like, he's not the, like, bitter jealous, you know? And I'm glad we didn't go fully that way. Like, it's clear he likes her. He makes it known he likes her. But she's also very clearly waiting on Ian. And he can tell that. And we'll get him, there's even more of that when we get there. But, like, you know, we know it's a thing. But then Rollo runs away. And she chases after him, can't find him. And we see Rollo finds Ian in the market, but then Ian doesn't know where Rachel went or whatever. So he's like, where did she go? So we know Ian is there. We're in the same vicinity, but they didn't run into each other. And now she feels like she lost Rollo. And she's like, oh my gosh, he's going to come back and I lost his dog. But they end up having to go back to the house, and we'll get back to them in a minute. But Ian and Rollo are reunited and it's beautiful. Okay, I love it. I love it so much. It makes me happy. Okay, so then we go back to 1739, and Galus makes a move on Roger. They have this moment, and it's kind of funny because in the show, like, Roger doesn't want to do too hard of a put down because he kind of wants her to be, like, you know, open to chatting with him, but she tries to make a move and she's like, we could arouse our blah, 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 whatever. And he's like, I'm married. And she's like, I'm married too. And he's like, that ends it for me. Like, I'm married. And also, you're my great-great-great-great-grandmother. So, ew. And there's some voiceover of him, like, saying that. But he makes the joke calling her that she might be a fairy lady and asks if you've seen the ferryman people are looking for who took his son. And he's like, his name is Robert Cameron. And she's like, or no, he doesn't say that that's who took his son. He says that a man named Robert Cameron said that she was like a fairy lady to kind of, you know, butter her up a little bit. And she very clearly doesn't know who Rob Cameron is. Otherwise, she'd be a really good liar. But in this case, she's kind of like, I know a lot of Camerons, but I don't know a Robert. And so he's like, oh, well, I'll have to introduce you sometime. Because he's supposedly the one who'd been flattering her, right? But then there is someone at the door, and she goes to answer the door, and who should be there but Dougal Mackenzie, or our wonderful Graham, who is himself. And I will say, we're going to get back to the scene with them, because this was just, you know, like the dun-da-da, he's there, and then we switch, you know, we switch to a different scene. But it's a really great moment, and it's funny to me, because remember that Graham, he originally played Buck when Buck was like in the show in season 5, because he's his own son. So they had Graham like have hair and like play Buck. And so some of us, right, we were a little disappointed that Graham wasn't going to play Buck for this. But I end up really liking this character who plays Buck, this actor. I think he does a great job. I think he looks even a little more like kind of like Roger type of Mackenzie, you know. And it would have been hard to make Graham look young. Like, we would have had to keep like coloring his beard and like all that, you know. And so I end up liking it. And of course, then it's so fun to have him show up. And then, yeah, we'll get back to him. But anyway, he shows up and is there. Okay, now we go to 1777 again. And we have Claire and Denny and Mercy all doing the surgery on Henry. And Denzel is just so fascinated as that Claire's able to actually, he's like, I'm never able to see inside of a live body. Which, just think about that. At that time, you were only seeing them if the person was dead, or the guts have been like blown out of a person, or this or whatever. To see inside of like a healthy body as they're doing this surgery, not only will that help make him a better doctor, it's fascinating. Like, he's never seen what like a living gallbladder looks like or any of those things, because any dissections that were done would have been on someone who's dead or someone who is injured, or even, you know, because a lot of like criminals' bodies were given to science. So very unhealthy bodies, or the sick or the poor who've died. So anyway, I just love how excited he is, but I feel a little bad for him as well. Or not bad. I felt bad for Lord John in it, because he's in the room watching and is just like seeing his nephew's guts in like Claire's hand while she's searching for this bullet, but it's really cool. Okay, then we have Rachel and Willie, who are waiting, or William are waiting in the like drawing room or whatever, and they're talking a little bit, and there's again a little bit of flirting where she's just kind of firmly like, you know, it's not going to work out between the two of us. But again, it stays friendly. And then we have John come out that everything went well and Henry's going to be okay, which we love to see it, okay? We love to see it. Then we have Mercy and Claire go outside after the surgery. It's very much a Claire thing, you know. She goes out and is like breathing the fresh air, because that's the thing too, being around the ether, you got to be careful, even when you're the doctor doing that, that you don't get too much of a breath of that, right? Mercy and Claire actually talk about Walker. They just have a nice moment about that. Remember, that was a soldier earlier this season that he'd been captured. And then Claire, there had been he had to have something amputated, and like it just didn't work out well. And so they talk about it, and it was good. Now we have Rachel, after the surgery is done, Rachel and Willie go back like into, well, I guess they live in town, but they go, she needs to take care of the horses at like, you know, there's like a boarding stable, but you're still kind of responsible for your own animals. So when she goes in there, she is followed by Archbug. So now is the time, finally, where he is like, Ian's here and you're here, and he's going to have to watch you die. So Bug is going to kill her in front of Ian. But Ian shows up and he jumps in, and Bug is actually able to injure him and is really getting the advantage over him. And of course, Rachel, who like, they don't do any type of violence. Like they don't do anything like that. The friends don't. Also, she wouldn't even know how. She probably would get them in more trouble than she would help. But it's so hard to watch. Like literally, Bug gets on top of Ian and he's going to hit him with an axe, and then William shoots him. So William is able to shoot Bug, and he's like, I'll take care of it. You guys go. There won't be any trouble for me for killing this man. So then it's the same, like, not the same scene, but the same time where we skip ahead, and Ian now has a bandage on and he's sitting in front of the fire, and Rollo is sitting at his feet, and we have a really beautiful scene. I love this scene. I can't wait to talk about this scene when we talk about the books, because they did a really good job. And Ian is saying all the things to her that he promised his Da that he would, saying that he loves her, and he's like, I would become a Quaker for you if I could, but I'm never going to be a Quaker in my mind, you know. And he's like, I don't think you'd want me to fake it for you. And she's like, you know, you're right, I don't. You know, so he's worried, like, well, is this still going to work out if I can't be what you, like, need me to be, you know? And she has a beautiful line here where she references to Rollo. She's like, he's a wolf, but yet he chooses to be your companion, and you trust that he's going to come home to you every night. I, of course, am paraphrasing. And she's like, you are a wolf, but you're my wolf, and I trust you to come home every night. And then he says, and lay at your feet. And she's like, yes. So it seems like things will be okay for them. All right. Now we have one final flip back to 1739. And now we go back to Dougal is there talking to Roger and Buck. And he is explaining that we heard that you're looking for your boy, and there's this ferryman, and they say that Dougal says that one of his men won these pieces of metal, and I'll tell you what they are. These pieces of metal off of a man in like a game of like poker or whatever. It's not poker, but whatever the game is that they're playing. And he's like, I thought it might be your boys because it says Jeremiah Mackenzie on them. And Roger looks at them, and for us, we know these are dog tags. These are World War II RAF dog tags, and they say Jeremiah Mackenzie on them. And Roger knows like what those are, and he's like, can I keep these? And then there's a little more going on, but let's get through this, right? And then Galus and Dougal are making eyes at each other, and they sneak off, and we're like, oh, well, that might be, that's when that got started with those two. Very interesting. And then Roger explains to Buck that his father disappeared in World War II and was never seen again. They didn't find a body. They didn't find anything. And he's like, these dog tags are World War II dog tags. What are they doing here? And Buck is like, that can't be. He's like, you aren't sure they're your father's? And he's like, and Buck's like, there are a lot of Jeremiah Mackenzies, which is a fair point to point out, Buck. Very, very true. We have a few of them around us, right? We have 3 of them that we know anyway, or 2 at least. And Roger points out, but how many of them would be RAF pilots and have disappeared and never been found? So Roger's thinking is he's like, what if the ferryman isn't Rob Cameron and my son? What if it's my father? And we'll find out for sure. Okay, so that's where we end off with Roger and Buck's story for the rest of this episode. Now, the rest of this is very difficult. Okay, so we go back to 1777, and there is a bit of stuff to kind of speed through here. So we find out Mercy is a spy. She has been sneaking letters. She is kind of a mid-courier person. She doesn't know who she's leaving them for, and that person doesn't know who she is. But she isn't able to get out anymore because someone had followed her. So Claire ends up taking the letter and dropping it off where it's supposed to go. And then we have her getting back, and there is a visitor waiting in the library talking with John. And it is a man who has proof that the ship called the Europe has went down, or Europe, whatever, it has went down. And of course, from the letter we got, which I'm pretty sure that I just skipped that part. I apologize in my explanation. After Ian and Rachel have their moment together, we skip ahead a little bit, and Claire has gotten the letter. I apologize. I missed that in my notes because I was so excited to talk about Dougal. But anyway, in his letter, he said which boat he was going to be getting passage on. And that's this boat. And it just went down, and there was no survivors. And they even have a passenger manifest that has Jamie's signature on it. And Lord John says he's gone. He's gone, Claire. And then we have a scene of her, it's supposed to show some time passing of her in bed, crying and memories of Jamie. And it's just devastating. It hurts. It hurts so bad to see. But then we have our twist. We have our fly in the ointment, even more. That a soldier arrives. In the book, this is a man called Richardson. I think that's who it is in the show too. Pretty positive it is, but I didn't pay attention to who his name was. But that's who it is in the book, so we'll assume. And he's actually telling John that he's going to be arresting Claire on suspicion of being a spy. And because of John's position, they wanted to give him a warning that they're going to be doing that. And John is like, absolutely, I understand. She's out of the house right now, but no problem, right? As soon as the man goes, John rushes up to Claire's bedroom, gets in there, and is like, you need to marry me right now. And she's like, you did not just say that. And he's like, I'm serious. This is the last service I can render to Jamie Fraser. Marry me and I'll save you. And then he explains the whole thing about they're going to arrest you for this. And he's like, if there's any truth to this, you have to marry me. And she doesn't say anything. And he's like, okay, well, you have to. And she's like, what if I want them to hang me? And he's like, you don't. Not only because no, you don't want to get hanged, but also it won't just be you, because if they're able to prove that it's you, everyone under his roof who is who is for the rebels, they'll go down with her. He's like, Mercy and Denzel and Rachel and Ian, they'll all crumble if you go, And so he's like, marry me and my name I'll protect you. They wouldn't dare come after you if you are Lady John Grey. And so that's the end of that episode, is we leave that hanging. And now, of course, we did get our previews of some of what's coming, but we'll talk about that at the end. So there we go. 30-minute review, recap of that. And oh boy, I know this has obviously some painful things in it, but it's some of my most dreamed about scenes of this entire series are happening both in this episode, and I know they're coming soon. And so as a book lover, there are tingles all over my body for just how wonderful this is to me. And I actually don't have a ton to say. We again covered a good part of what is in this book. There's still a little bit that hasn't been covered in book 7. And we again covered parts of this book that are well into this book because they're about the Roger and Buck stuff. Remember where we ended with them last time? We were in here. So we're doing Roger and Buck stuff right here, which I think makes sense because if they're planning, as we have talked about, to get through book 8 by the end of this season, doing this Roger and Buck stuff, I really think is helping with that. I have more to comment on that in a moment, but let's go into this, okay? So I have some of my notes here. This is another case of, like last week, of course, I mean, that's the whole train of what's happening right now, is they're bouncing around a little bit with things. They've shifted some things. There's a few characters that don't exist that would be doing certain things that are on, that the show kind of smushes together. But I don't feel that they've removed anything too awful. And the things they are showing are wonderful. Like, just wonderfully acted, powerful scenes. I love it. So first off, though, with the stuff to do with Jamie and Jenny and saying goodbye to Ian, this is where, as I made a comment earlier, Ian's last word is actually Jamie's name. And it's not like this is this huge deal, but it is significant because the next bit of the book is in Jamie's point of view. And he's like, he wondered if Jenny minded that Ian's last words had been to him, but he thought not. The one mercy to go to a going such as his brother-in-law's had been there was time to take leave. So he knows that the children and Jenny had had a chance to talk with him. And also, he says this, he's like, what would he say to Claire in such circumstances? He wondered. Probably what he had said to her when she left to go back to America, which was, I love you, I'll see you again. He didn't see any way of improving on a sentiment like that after all. So that's why, like, Ian's last word being Jamie isn't like it's some slap in the face to Jenny at all. But I guess maybe the show, like, they would then have to explain that thought that the book does, and it's just easier to just have Ian's last name be Jenny. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't, it doesn't take away anything, and it's very sweet to have it be Jenny, because what I just explained to you, the show would then need to explain, like, why was his last word Jamie? You know what I mean? So it was beautiful. Loved it so much. The other thing that is different is that, as I mentioned, Jenny in the show, Jamie asked her to come to America, and she's like, maybe someday. Now, I know that she absolutely is coming with him, but I think we'll see that acted out when she changes her mind. However, in the book, he asks, or she asks to go when he is, like, they're sitting outside and she's like, I want to leave. And he's like, I don't blame you. Should we go for a walk? And she's like, no, I want to leave for good. And Jamie's actually the one like, hold on, don't make a huge decision in grief. Are you sure you want to go? And she's like, I do, And she says, she's like, Ian's with me. He'll never leave me, nor I him. And she says, he'll never leave you either, Jamie. You know that as well as I do. And that's where they have that moment too of like, where do you think he is right now? And he says, he's right here where he belongs, the spot between them. So that's all the same. The only difference here is that Jenny is more reluctant to leave in the show, whereas in the book, she's like, I want to go. It's time, right? There's nothing holding her there anymore. And in my opinion, well, I think it'll be said later on when we actually get to talk, like when Claire will get to talk to Jenny about what's going on. She's like, you know, her daughter-in-law is now the mistress there, sticking around and being the widowed lady standing in the way of the next generation. Like, Jenny doesn't deserve to be seen that way, you know? And she can go somewhere. Like, it's talked about, she's never been more than 10 miles from her home her whole life. She's never wanted to before, but now she can. So that's just a wee little difference. And again, I don't think that that means that show Jenny isn't going to go. I'm sure she is. I just think maybe in the show they're having her need to think about it more or whatever. Totally fine. Get it. All right. Then book stuff. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So then in chapter 86 here, I make little marks of this. So as we've said, her reason for coming back in the book is because Henry Christian needs a surgery. And when we, in the book, go to see what happens, we get to see a bit of the backstory of, not like a lot of it, but of like why Henry like needs this surgery and everything. We see William actually is the one who like goes and gets Denny to bring him to do the surgery, right? Because we're in an occupied city is what it is. So he is the one in his uniform to go get Denny and Rachel and bring them to the house. And then that surgery that Denny tells Claire about in the show, like we see that stuff happening. So that's kind of cool. And we see Lord John actually being right there for that one. And that, you know, he says Denny did a good job. He was as quick as he could be, da, da, da. So then we have, and again, we have a lot of the same stuff with William and Rachel and stuff. A lot of that's the same. Something that's missing though is there is a character named Dorothea who I believe is Henry Gray's sister. Henry Gray must be this woman's sister. Yes, Dorothea. And so William's other cousin. And Denny and Dorothea love each other in the books. And so that character doesn't exist in the show. So I don't know if we're just going to ignore that if we have too many love stories going on at once. Totally get it. That's fine. I'm not like mad about it, but I hope she maybe shows up. I really like that character, but we have so much to do and so many things to show. I would understand if we cut that character. I just would be a little like, you know, it's that kind of love story that's kind of on the level of like an Lizzie and the Beardsleys. Like, it's fun to see it played out, but it's not the end of the world to not have it. But that is something that we're missing from the book, just to point it out. So yeah, there's Dorothea. So Oh, also, I meant to comment this earlier. I do kind of like that this episode is called Brotherly Love. And not only did it have those beautiful moments of like Jamie and Ian at the beginning, but they're in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Sorry, I meant to make a comment on that earlier, but I just saw Claire talking about this. So Claire makes it to see Marcelly and Fergus. And then she gets told that an English lord had bought all of the vitriol that he had. And the English lord's name was Lord John Grey. So this, Claire going to get the vitriol so she can make ether for Henry Christian in the books is what leads Claire to Lord John's door. And when she shows up, she's like, oh my word, happy to see you. How's it going? And he's like, my Henry is ill, actually. Or no, who's saying it? Is Dorothea saying it? Yeah, Dorothea is the one who answers the door in here. So, we're like, Henry is sick. He's not doing very well. And Lord John is like, oh my gosh, hi, Claire. Oh my God. And immediately Lord John is like, oh, Claire's here. This could be very good for us, you know? And she's like, oh, he's in Scotland. My, brother-in-law was dying. It's not good. And she's like, I have just got here and I've come to ask for a favor. And he's like, sure, what do you need? What do you need? And she explains, my grandson needs help and I was told that you bought all the vitriol. And Lord John says, I did. I bought it for you, Mrs. Fraser. So still beautiful because John had still bought it for her. It's just in the book, he had probably bought it because he was going to send it to her on the ridge or whatever. And in this case, he had it already. So what's cool in the book is now they make that, I mean, it's not as if Claire would have said no to helping Henry at all. But the way it's written is a bargain was struck. He would not only give me the vitriol, but would also purchase any other medical supplies I needed if I would help with surgery on Henry. So she's like, of course I will, right? So then we have all this stuff is the same with Henry and Denny and her like doing on that. That's all great, good stuff. And again, Denny is just so happy. He's like, oh, Claire, it's such a gift to be able to cut without giving pain, to keep a patient quite still without restraint. It is unimaginable. I just love his joy about it. We love it. Okay, so the surgery goes good. And then William and Rachel, they're all waiting. That's the same. That's the same. Okay, so we get the 2 letters. Jamie has 2 letters that Claire is able to pick up. One was from March of 1778. Ooh, this is a whole year later. Didn't realize that. Love to see it. March of 1778. And then there's one from April 1st. So they had like got to her at the same time. And in this letter that he writes, he says the boat that he'll be on, that he's booked purchase on the Europe or whatever. So that's when we're hearing that. Now, what happens though is that in the story, so the surgeries have happened and everything's fine, but there's this little chapter here, chapter 92, where it explains that the boat that he bought passage on, the Eutripe, I can't say it, I'm sorry, you know what I mean, the E name, it sailed without Jamie. Okay, it sailed without him. The boat that he's able to get on is actually called the Philomene. So, I know that's a bit of a spoiler for how he's still alive. It isn't that he miraculously survived anything, but we're going through the story here because it happens in the middle of it. And Jenny is with him on this trip too. So, she's coming with him, which is beautiful. But the boat they were supposed to be on sailed without them, and now they had to get on a different boat. And so he's very annoyed with that. But we're going to be very damn happy that that boat left without him. It's a good thing. But chapter 93 is when now Claire is actually at, she's with Fergus and Marcelly and the kids. That's where she's staying when she's in town, since they're there. And Lord John shows up, and it says in the book here, it says, to my surprise, it was Lord John, but a Lord John I had never seen before. He was not so much disheveled as shattered, everything in order save his face. And she's like, oh my gosh, did Henry die? And he says, no, the boat, it's lost. It's lost with all the hands. And he said, he is dead. He's gone. So, it's just so hard to see. They're both just so shattered by this. And right away in the book is Richardson is now telling him about this. So it's very quick in here where he's told Claire, and then I think he's literally on the walk home is how it's in the book. And this guy is like, yeah, we're going to arrest him. And Lord John is thinking, there was, after all, one more service that he might perform for Jamie Fraser. And here we go is where we're ending with the John and Claire stuff, as he says, you must marry me. You can't possibly have said what I think. He said, you are going to marry me. Are you aware that you're about to be arrested as a spy? And he says, it will take everyone. And in this case, he says, it will be, Fergus's family, Ian and Rachel, Denny, all of them will be in trouble if she doesn't do this. And so she says, all right, when? And he says, right now, there's no time to lose. So in the book, they don't even have any time for this. So I won't go into then any more after that, where I'm stopping right where she agreed to marry him, because I am absolutely positive we will be getting that in the next episode based on the previews. So there is still a tiny little bit that is going to happen in this book to do with Claire and John and Jamie, okay? But this book does also cover the Ian and Rachel stuff, as I said, and actually the very end of the book, the last chapter of this is called The Hour of the Wolf, and it's in Rachel's point of view, and it is that scene basically that we saw of Ian and Rachel going back, and he says, I know what I am. I would turn Quaker for your sake, Rachel, but I know I'm not one in my heart. I think I never could be, and I think you wouldn't want me to say words I did not mean or pretend to be something I can't be. And she said, no, I wouldn't do that. And then we have the same thing about the wolf. It says, thee is a wolf too, and I know it. But thee is my wolf, and best thee know that. And what I say to thee now is that I do love thee. And if thee hunts at night, thee will come home. And Ian says, and sleep at thy feet. And that is the end of this book. But like I said, we do still have a little bit left that has to do with the fate of Jamie and Jenny, and now John and Claire are married, so she's 2 times a bigamist, I guess. There we go. Now, the only other thing to mention then is the stuff with Roger, as I said. And again, we just cover a wee little bit of this because there is Dougal showing up. He says, my name is Dougal of Castle Leoch, and who might you be? And he says, I'm Roger Jeremiah Mackenzie of Kyle of Loch. So he made up a name there. And then we go through all of that, blah, blah, blah. And in the book, so a little bit that's different too, is that Roger, his throat is much more messed up in the book than they went with in the show. They've pretty much moved past that for him in the show, which that's fine. It's okay. It's a big part of his character for me in the book, but I understand that they made that kind of an issue for season 5, and we kind of moved past it. Basically, after what like happens with Claire and how big that deal is, and then when they go back, like we're kind of done with dealing with it. But he actually, someone like helps him with it here, which is crazy. And we hear about Galis in here, and this is where I said she has a different name. It's Isbeister at the time, which you can tell why they just went with Galis Duncan, because it's the name that we know. That's great. Also in the book, as I said, we are going between Jem's point of view, Bree's point of view, and Roger's point of view. But I'm skipping over the Jem stuff because eventually we have to get an episode that will catch us up with what's happening with Bree and Jem and Mandy, because where did they go? We're not finding Rob Cameron and Jem where we are. Where is everyone, right? And we haven't seen anything of them since that one little scene of Bree and Mandy in the car in episode 9. We've had so much to cover. So I'm skipping talking about the Bree and Jem stuff because I'm sure we haven't skipped it. I think we're just, we're going to have an episode where we catch up with all of that. So, but we are pinging between all of those things. So then, let me get to it. Sorry. Okay, so then they're still trying to hunt stuff down. And in this one, he hears about a Captain Randall at the garrison who came by 3 days ago with a small party of soldiers. There's a new man in charge, and his name is Randall, Jonathan Randall. And it said, he took to you last. Wouldn't be surprised if he came back one of these days. Brian, don't joke, Brian. Brian, it's not funny, Brian. So Anyway, but there ends up being this little, it says, there was a tiny cloth-wrapped parcel that Brian Fraser had, and he gave it to him, and he said, Captain Randall said that Captain Buncombe sent word with all the patrols that one of them came across this wee Bobby and sent it back to Fort William. None of them have ever seen such a thing before, but because of the name, they were thinking it might have to do with your lad. So, and that is the dog tags, and it has the name on it. And so all that we talked about. Now, this is the thing, again, where Buck is like, you can't be sure that hits your father. How many Mackenzies are there, for God's sake? And he says there's lots, but not so bloody many who flew for the Royal Air Force in World War II, and even fewer who disappeared without a trace. As for those who might be time travelers, well, we don't know. So what happens within this is that I don't want to talk too much further, because that is like the end of what we see, right? That's it. But the difference between the show and this, right, is that Dougal isn't the one who brings it to us, but we do see Dougal. The book, we see Dougal and ask him if he's seen anything, which is great. But Blackjack Randall is the one who, he has possession, or had possession of these dog tags, and they got sent so that Roger could see them. So Roger is now going to want to go, well, he doesn't want to, but he wants to go talk to the garrison commander to see if he knows about his father. So I don't know if we're going to do that. I've said I'm still holding out hope. I know people keep trying to quash my hope, but I won't give up until it's pried from my hands and we've completely moved past it, okay? There still could be him trying to find his father and going and talking to see if he's seen them. But that's the difference in the book currently, is that it was Blackjack Randall and his men who have these dog tags, and they get passed, like Brian ends up getting his hands on them, and then he brings them to him, and Roger is like, what if this guy is my dad instead? So, whew, again, pretty much everything that's in the show is in the books. It's just a matter of where we're plucking it from, and I continue to be very impressed with that. This one, though, I will give this one, I know I gave the last one a 9 out of 10. I would give this one more of an 8 out of 10. Still a passing grade, absolutely. I still enjoyed it, and again, I know I seem a bit too giddy for some of the very serious things that happened in this one, you know, losing Ian, and then finding out that Jamie's dead. But I don't think anyone, look, tell me, I don't think anyone watching this show thinks that we're going to lose Jamie Fraser so early on. How many other times have we thought he's been dead and we find him somehow? And so I'm not, you know, I don't presume that anyone actually thinks he's dead. It's a matter of like what happened. But it is hard, you know, it's hard to see Claire think that. But she's right. She would feel it if he was dead, and she didn't feel it. So though she lets John talk her into this marriage, because in this moment, it is what's best to save everyone who relies on their protection. But, you know, what do you think Jamie's response is going to be when he shows up and finds out his friend Mary Claire? I know what book Jamie does. What do you guys think? If you haven't read it or you are behind in reading from it, what do you think is going to happen? How do you think it'll be between John and Claire? John and Claire getting married. If you remember way back when we met John Barry as Lord John Grey, I was excited for this part of the show. I love the stuff we'll see between John and Claire in the hopefully upcoming episode, but for sure, like this part of the book, I adore it so much, and I'm so happy for John Barry, who I know with those big blue eyes of his is going to act the pants off of this. I am so excited for it, and I just get so giddy because of the talent displayed and the care to the story. I adore. Now, my very final things on it. I have heard now from some of you guys in the comments that episode 11 is one that made everyone cry who was working on it. That is what apparently the actors and the the creatives behind say, and I can only imagine what it's going to be based on what I think it's going to show. But I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. So I loved this. Again, 8 out of 10 accuracy-wise, enjoyment-wise, 10 out of 10. They're doing wonderful. It's fantastic to see. I'm so happy to see Ian and Rachel making progress. I adore them so much. I love to see it. I even liked William in this. He's really becoming the William that I love. And what a funny little note is, I will say this, right? With her marrying John, Claire is now his stepmother 2 times over. Okay? It's funny. Okay, the irony of that, the fact that she's always been his stepmother and he didn't know, and now she's married to his stepfather, and she says, I love the irony of that. Okay, I love it. I love it so much. So, anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making it through this again with me. Give me some green hearts down below if you made it to the end. And as always, I will have a pinned comment. Tell me what you thought about this episode. How accurate do you think it is? Are you excited for what's coming up? Please try not to spoil past this point if you can. If you do, just leave some space so people don't see it. I know I spoil slightly with some things, but I try to keep it at least with the show so that people who don't want to fully know will know. Again, I don't think saying that Jamie lives is a spoiler. I'm sorry if it is. It's not a spoiler in my opinion. So there we go. But thank you so much for watching. You guys are amazing, and we'll see you next time. Bye.